Welcome, everybody, to the SOTA Symposium. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the SOTA website next week. We'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use the Q&A feature at any time during the symposium to write in your question. And if you would like the opportunity to ask your question live, you can indicate that, and we will call on you and unmute you during the Q&A portion. So I'm delighted to introduce our panel for today, the SOTA Symposium, titled Enhancing Living Standard Surveys in LMICs Using Large Language Models, will be presented by Philip Wohlburg, who is a senior economist at the survey unit of the Development Data Group at the World Bank, based in Rome. He co-leads the program on innovations in survey measurement of the Living Standards Measurement Study. Many of you might know it as LSMS. LSMS is the World Bank's flagship household survey program. It has given me great joy over the last 20 years to watch its developments. And Philip's research focuses on agriculture, poverty, health, and the impacts of shocks, as well as measurement and survey methods, all of it which can be studied with this survey program. Philip was a core team member of the World Development Report from 2021, Data for Better Lives. And prior to joining the World Bank, he worked with the Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN and led a project aimed at delivering innovative renewable energy solutions to smallholder agriculture and fisheries communities in East Africa. Our moderator for the Q&A portion of the event from the survey unit at the World Bank as well, home at the International Comparison Program, IPC, Living Standards Measurement Study, LSMS, and Survey Solutions in the Development Data Group at the World Bank in DC. So the two people that you will see moderating the Q&A are Talib Kilik. He's the acting manager and senior program manager of the survey unit, and Amparo, I didn't practice your last name, Palacios Lopez, a program manager in the LSMS. So thank you all, and Philip, please go ahead and present your talk.
Thank you so much, Farke. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Also on my behalf, I'm Philip Wohlburg. Farke kindly introduced me and presented my bio. I'm looking forward to talking today about what the Living Standards Measurement Study, the LSMS, does, and specifically present our work program on using AI and large language models to enhance what surveys in low and middle income countries can do. I will perhaps say up front that we are interested in collaborating with students, with data scientists, with researchers in this work and in other works that we do on survey research, on survey methods. And hopefully we can interest you in our work and induce you to collaborate with us if you're interested. Okay, so my talk has three parts. I'll start with a short overview of the Living Standards Measurement Study program, the LSMS program. Then I'll do a little deeper dive into the survey methods and measurement program, and then the bulk of the presentation is on using LLMs to enhance household surveys in lower and middle income countries, which is one of the strands of our survey research program. So the LSMS, the Living Standard Measurement Study, it's as has been said, is the World Bank's flagship household survey program. And our work is structured around four complementary pillars: data production and advisory services, survey methods, policy research and training. And the objective is to provide a comprehensive approach to household surveys across the survey lifecycle, producing timely and quality data for better informed policy design and development investments. Let me first talk a little bit about data production and advisory services. We are supporting survey operations across the World Bank, and we have our own flagship surveys, the LSMS integrated surveys on agriculture, which is a series of longitudinal household surveys focused on living standards and smallholder agriculture in 8 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. As part of this series, we have produced 33 face-to-face surveys in the period of 2008 and 2024, 124 phone survey rounds, and 4 harmonized data sets. And these data have been widely used in development economics research and beyond, with 7,200, approximately 7,200 publications, of which 35% were done by African researchers. So this has created a substantial public good, but it has also informed a large number of World Bank projects. According to our estimates, about a $25 billion worth of World Bank projects. And we are now starting a revamped version of these surveys under the name Resilient Futures, which are a little bit more harmonized and a little bit leaner, fitting, perhaps a bit more this time. And the 2 first countries are Tanzania and Ethiopia this year. I'm happy to elaborate later on any of these aspects, and I have Talib and Amparo here as well, so we can answer any questions also on data production or other aspects of the LSMS. Our technical assistance and training work is primarily about building technical capacity in partner countries and strengthening household survey systems, as well as improving the quality and use of microdata. So in the last fiscal year, 2025-26, we supported 60 countries that received technical assistance for face-to-face and phone surveys. And we also participate in this C42 training initiative here from Rome, which provides statisticians in various African countries with specialized statistics skills. Okay, now let me talk about knowledge and research and development, which is the focus of today's talk. So we have a range of products in this domain, including guidebooks on survey design and best practice methods, peer-reviewed articles on survey methods, but also on policy topics like agricultural development, for example. In the last year, for reference, our team produced 38 different knowledge products. And we also organized 2 expert convenings on survey methods and 2 academic conferences at the World Bank headquarters in Washington, D.C. So let me go a little deeper into our survey methods and measurement program. Now, I don't know to what extent you are familiar with household or with the household survey landscape in LMICs, but household surveys remain the backbone of evidence generation on living standards in low and middle income countries. And they are key tools to inform policy and investments. And at the same time, survey systems in these countries are under growing pressure to basically to do more at a lower cost, right? So this, on the one hand, is because budgets contract. At the same time, demands for data, including for survey data, continue to rise. And there's pressure for more content, more granular, faster, and more frequent data collection. The result is a growing strain on surveys and on survey instruments, on field teams, on respondents. And this, of course, has real risks for data quality and the quality of the evidence that is produced through these survey systems. So our view of this situation is that innovative survey methods and new technologies can address these challenges, or at least, reduce costs and maintain at least acceptable a level of data quality, and so kind of address some of these rising tensions between quality and cost at this moment in time. The key principle in our approach is that methods should be validated experimentally before they are scaled up. And so, building on previous work that we have done in the survey methods and the survey research space, we have recently launched a 5-year program to develop and validate a new wave of NI-enabled and NI-enabling survey methods for use in LMICs. And so here I want to take just a moment to talk about the relationship between our data collection activities and our methods research and development program. These are mutually reinforcing pillars of our work. So we develop and validate best practice methods aimed at improving data quality and reducing cost that are then scaled up in our data production and advisory work, right? And in turn, our data production work enables us to learn what works, what matters on the ground, to build capacity there, and to identify new priority areas for methodological development. Okay, so the current areas of work of our methods program. So on the method side, we are currently working on sampling for priority populations, mixed mode surveys and high frequency measurement, individual level data collection, survey to survey imputation, surveys as ground truth, or survey data as ground truth for ML and AI prediction models, and that's what we'll talk about mostly today: AI and digital tools to enhance surveys and LMICs. We have, for this 5-year period, a number of priority topics. These include employment and small businesses, energy, agriculture and food security, resilience and adaptation, and health. And as I mentioned, this principle of experimental validation is really a key principle, a core principle of our work. So here I have a list of survey experiments, of field experiments that we have currently underway or in preparation. So in Bangladesh, we have recently started a study on mixed mode surveys, where we're focusing on adaptation and resilience, as well as employment outcomes. And this will include this AI, this kind of cross-cutting AI work program, about which I will tell you more in a second. Then, starting soon, we have another sampling-focused field experiment in Nepal. Kenya is also focused on sampling, but for hard-to-reach populations. And this is slated to start in the fall of this calendar year. And then in Malawi, we have ongoing work, sort of a series of phone surveys, which we are using for methodological experimentation. Now, as you can see, in all of these ongoing and planned or pipeline studies, we are looking to incorporate this new AI work program angle, about which I will tell you more now. So, using LLMs to enhance household surveys in lower and middle income countries. So here I want to take a step back and talk about the data quality challenges in surveys in lower and middle income countries, but perhaps in surveys in general, not just in lower and middle income countries. We can think of data quality challenges arising from these three key components of a survey interview, which is respondents, enumerators, and instruments. Respondents may face fatigue, they have incentives to answer in certain ways or not, and there may be misunderstanding. enumerators may take shortcuts, they may coach respondents, there's interviewer effects, right? And then survey instruments can really complicate the survey process, really compromise data quality through a combination of their length or their complexity and this sort of the implications for cognitive load. And so this then translates to challenges or errors in survey data. Now they can show up as missing values, implausible values, internal inconsistency, and coherent but incorrect narratives. And the point is these are not always observable. Right? So we will see now how and to what extent AI can perhaps help uncover some of these issues. Now, let's look at the survey process. So basically, this is just a sort of a scheme of how this usually plays out. We have a survey instruments, which is basically the questionnaire with translations and skips. You take that then to the interview, which is an interaction between the respondent and the enumerator. And then you have response capture, right, where the enumerator will translate what the respondent tells them, for example, in a paper questionnaire or CAPI or CATI entry on a tablet or a computer. Nowadays we're also able to record these interactions, and our survey program software records paradata, right? And paradata is in this context. So we have our own in-house survey applications, which is called Survey Solutions. And paradata is a set of variables that will tell us something about how the survey went. For example, the length that it took to answer certain questions, the timing of the survey, skips, and so on. Then we take the raw data to data processing for cleaning and variable construction, and then it can be released for data use and analysis. Now, AI or LLMs can enhance the survey process at all of these different stages. And so I will focus today on our program related mostly to this sort of central box, right, about the interview process itself and the response capture, as well as a little bit on analysis. But as part of the survey unit at the Development Data Group of the World Bank, we also have colleagues with whom we collaborate quite closely that are working on AI applications for example, simplified creation of survey instruments, right? Or using AI or LLMs in data processing. Okay, now the principles of the LSMS AI work program, these are aligned with the general principles of our methods program. So we are focused here on measurement quality under constraints. Constraints being, the field conditions in lower and middle income countries, but perhaps most importantly, financial constraints that all survey operations have. We are combining engineering and survey methodology, and this all relies on experimental validation, as I mentioned before. It's built for deployment, not for demonstration, in the sense that we are looking to scale up the solutions that we develop in large-scale household surveys, and not just leave it at a sort of a demonstration that we can show in a research paper. Now, the LSMS AI work program has these three pillars. There's a foundational layer that's a recording, transcription, and translation pipeline, and that contains audio recording, the interview, transcription, and translation using LLMs, and then linking text to micro and paradata. Building on this, workstream 1 is about detecting and reducing survey errors, where we are looking to detect irregularities and faulty responses and patterns correlated with poor data quality, and as well as workstream 2, which is about simplifying and enriching questionnaires. Here we're talking about, open-ended responses, open-ended questions, automated coding of these kind of open-ended responses, and the ability to kind of analyze narrative data at scale. So let me talk about this foundational layer. I will walk us through the different parts and aspects of the work program step by step, and I'll try to also point out at each point some of the challenges associated that we're facing associated with each step. Okay, so this foundational layer, right? The idea here is to create a transcript at scale of the interviews. The first step in that, of course, is the recording of interviews. So interviews take place in noisy, uncontrolled environments. Devices, microphones, and field conditions vary widely. Think, for example, also about the recording of a phone survey versus an in-person survey, right? Enumerators and respondents may not always be easy to distinguish in the audio recording, and then the audio quality differs across enumerators, locations, and time. So the challenge here is really how to obtain usable and comparable recordings across contexts. The next step is moving from transcription, or moving from recording to transcription, so from speech to text. Now, this is where we are relying on a large language model, and automatic speech recognition is imperfect in low resource settings, right? Now, if you think about the experiments that I mentioned that we are running or that we have in our pipeline, these are all low resource languages, right? So we have Bengali in Bangladesh, Nepalese, Swahili, and Chichewa, and those are, many people speak these languages, but they are considered low resource languages. Now, the transcription errors may be systematic and not just at random, right? And so the question is, or the challenge, the questions associated with this is, when is transcription good enough for downstream analysis? Something else we need to determine. The next step is translation. Again, we have the issue of low resource languages, though I have to say, I think this is probably the least difficult part, at least, in settings where there aren't a great deal of local languages. Now, translation can introduce drift in meaning and emphasis, and then above all, I think there is this sort of chain of errors that can compound with, as we move from recording with some errors in the recording to transcription with some errors in the transcription to translation with some errors in the translation. And so the challenge is, how do we preserve meaning and comparability of this kind of data also across languages? Step 4 is linking the text of the transcript to the survey micro and paradata, right? And so the transcripts, they must align with the survey questions, the responses, and the survey paradata. Now, if you think about the survey process and what you see in the survey data, there's of course skips. People go back and forth. They correct answers, and this kind of nonlinear, the possibility of this nonlinear flow complicates the alignment between a transcript and the survey microdata. And this misalignment undermines both these work programs or on the work streams on quality control analysis. And so the challenge here is, how do we reliably connect text to the underlying survey structure? Okay, now with this sort of layout in mind, we have so far developed a prototype for the transcription pipeline that can handle low and high resource languages. It sort of uses two different LLMs for this, and it will route transcripts one way or the other, depending on whether it's a low or a high resource language. It has a built-in layer for model training and validation. And it's sort of, on the the first trials that we've done with these prototypes, or with this prototype, performed relatively well. Then on the issue of linking the survey data with transcripts, we have so far relied on the timestamps, right? The timestamps basically that link the survey data to the paradata that can then be linked to the transcript. But this, of course, has the limitations that it essentially all has to come out of one application, or at least one device that uses exactly the same timestamps. Okay, so what does this foundational layer get us? It basically moves the interview process, which usually is the black box, and makes it observable, right? So because it's observable, it's also analyzable, and this creates new signals, new data beyond just the entered responses. And the new data, we are hoping to use it to improve measurement and analysis. Okay, then I will move to workstream 1, which is about detecting and reducing error in survey data. Now, the goal here is to use AI or LLMs to detect survey errors that standard quality control misses. The input is from the foundational layer. It will use the structured responses plus the interview text plus the paradata. And the output, ideally, will be actionable quality signals during or after field work. Okay. Again, here I'm following the sort of step-by-step and challenge-by-challenge exposition. So the first challenge here, the first step here, is to obtain ground truth, right? So now survey data, they rarely reveal whether a response is truly wrong, right? Now, large-scale surveys, or any surveys, really contain plausible but incorrect responses, right? For example, if an enumerator coaches a respondent, or if the enumerator just responds on behalf of them, it's not always super easy and super obvious to catch these kinds of coherent but wrong narratives. And so many errors pass standard range and logic checks. So the question is, the challenge is, how do we generate reliable training and evaluation data for error detection, right? Sort of how do we benchmark or ground truth what answers are good or bad, or right or wrong? And I'll give you an example here of an approach that we've used, or that we are using in the study in Bangladesh, where we have a sort of a combination of observable ground truth, right? So this is the case for housing, for example, right? We have a survey module on housing, which the respondent will tell us about, but can also be observed by the enumerator and independently verified. And the same goes for water, sanitation and hygiene implements, as well as infrastructure around the house. And these are things that are objectively verifiable and observable. So there are a number of questions in these instruments that allow us to kind of benchmark the ground truth. Something that serves a similar purpose is consistency checks across answers, right? So you can imagine that the answer to one question and the answer to another question are in a relation where if you understood the question correctly, if you paid attention to it, there are some impossible combinations that would raise a flag about the quality of this interview, the quality of the answers. And inverted response scales can sort of serve a similar purpose. Now, of course, this is something that's the advantage, of these experiments, that we can build in these ground truthing mechanisms as best as possible. But these are harder just to do at large scale in large scale surveys. So then, in that sense, it becomes about the training and validation of the models before we scale them up. Okay, now the next step is about representing survey interviews for AI for LLM systems, right? As we said, the survey data and the transcripts, they combine structure, language, and interaction, and the errors emerge often across questions and not within them, right? And so it's kind of not obvious how to best present this information that comes from essentially 3 different data sources, but is it talking about the same process, how to represent that to an LLM, right? And the LLMs require explicit choices about, the alignment, the granularity, the context. And so how do we represent interviews so that the AI, the LLM, can reason about quality without losing structure or interpretability? Then step 3, which is related, sort of one step downstream, is about using LLMs for quality control. Now, as we all know, LLM outputs are probabilistic and non-deterministic. Responses depend on prompt design and context length, right? And reasoning is not always transparent or stable. And so the question, the challenge is really, how can LLMs be used as a diagnostic tool for data quality in a replicable and transparent way, right? And this is important, of course, for doing good science, good research, but also to be able to scale these kinds of solutions, these kinds of technologies to large-scale surveys. Okay, step 4, benchmarking and validation. Rule-based quality control is transparent, right? Because it's just based on a set of rules that we input. But of course, that also means it's limited. There's also statistical models that we can use for quality control. They detect patterns, but of course, they don't have this kind of semantic context that a transcript could deliver. LLM-based systems, on the other hand, they may flag new errors, right? This is what we're hoping for. We hope that they can identify behaviors that lead to errors, that they can identify patterns that are correlated with errors. But obviously, there's also a risk of overreach, of over-identifying things that are not really generalizable. And so really an open question is when, where, and for which types of errors do LLMs add value relative to simpler methods? Okay. Now I'm moving to work stream 2, which is about simplifying and enriching questionnaires. So what's the problem here? Household surveys in the context in which we work as the LSMS, and they rely heavily on structured questions. Right? Structure makes data easier to analyze, but interviews become longer this way, and these kind of structured questions, structured data, it performs very poorly for complex concepts. For example, if I ask a respondent why they do a certain thing or how something has happened, this kind of structured approach to responses really kind of limits and risks misrepresenting the situation. And so surveys in that respect can lack depth, but it also can increase the length of the questionnaire, which in turn increases burden and fatigue for respondents. And structured formats, as I was saying, they often miss nuance and context. So the goal of this second work stream is to use AI, to use LLMs to simplify questionnaires and interpret open-ended questions at scale. The input will be, open-ended survey questions plus interview transcripts, and then the output is the classification, structuring of survey questions at scale. Okay, the first step here, of course, is designing effective open-ended questions. So open-ended survey questions can vary quite widely in response quality, right? Some respondents give rich answers, others say very little. And of course, this is really a hotbed for enumerator effects, right? Because enumerator prompting influences what is said, and this is even more the case for these completely open-ended questions where prompting can make a big difference. So the challenge here, the first challenge, is a survey design challenge: how to design short, robust prompts or questions that work across respondents and settings. Step 2 is interpreting open-ended responses at scale consistently. Now, respondents express similar experiences in different ways, and the LLM, the AI, must group diverse answers into shared categories. And categories, ideally remain stable across surveys and countries to be able to scale this up. And so the challenge is, how do we ensure that AI interpretations are both meaningful and comparable? Step 3 is benchmarking against traditional survey questions. So, structured questions for all of their problems, they're well understood and standardized, while the open-ended approaches promises richness, but they can obviously add noise. And then the gains, not just in terms of analytical richness, but also in terms of how they simplify the questionnaire, they really need to be demonstrated empirically before we pursue this any further. And so the key issue here is, when do AI process open-ended questions perform better than traditional instruments, and when do they not? Okay, and I'm coming to the end of the presentation. So in summary, what we are building is this sort of this new observability layer for surveys, going from audio to text to structured linkage. This is not something that we have ever done at scale. I told you about the current status of the prototype. This will then be applied to 2 measurement applications. The first one is about detecting hidden error in survey data. The second one about simplifying questionnaires and improving analytical depth of surveys. And so looking ahead, there are still a number of technical and methodological challenges and open questions in both work streams. And we are there are opportunities for collaboration and student research, and we are happy to talk about these. Okay, this is all I have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. We would like to know if there are any questions regarding the presentation. We can go over the questions that were shared in the chat. So let's start with the last one. Yes, the presentation will be available. So the organizers of the event will share the presentation after we finish. So that's one question. Regarding, there's a question about whether we have encountered any ethical concerns or requirements from local ethics committees when recording interviews in low and middle income countries. So I would say no, but we have been able so far to follow the very, very clear procedures for the protection of that data privacy. And this also follows, the World Bank has very high standards on this. And so we have, but Talib is answering here. So Talib, please go ahead with this answer.
I think you were beginning to do just fine, but just to complement what you were saying, we now have a data privacy office for several years now, that have also started issuing more structured guidance on consent, and in this particular case, the recording of the interview obviously elevates the concern around data privacy. As such, we've now reformulated our consent forms about the need to explicitly consent to recording, and the consent forms themselves also explain how the data will be used, how it will be stored for how, and specifically for how long, and how it will be discarded basically at the end of the research period. This is again per advice from the Data Privacy Office, and then obviously much of this data collection that Philip alluded to throughout the presentation is on the back of the Survey Solutions platform, which is the platform that the unit that I oversee also develops for designing and implementing large-scale surveys and censuses. And there are several measures that are also in place regarding data storage and data processing, related security measures that help protect us. But the platform itself is constantly tested for vulnerabilities in this area, and then we continue to try doing our best in staying ahead of various vulnerabilities. So, but if there are any follow-up questions on this, as Amparo also said, we're now beginning, so I think there will be some learning to be done as well. And as we learn more, I think the approach will also be modified.
Mm-hmm. The other question was regarding what's the offer to work with the students? How do we envision this type of collaboration? And so, well, maybe I will start and then I will let Philip and Talib come in. But we have a lot of data. We have a lot of plans coming. So we are looking for enthusiastic students that could work with us on the analysis of the data and on all of these processes that Philip described. This could be in the form of an internship. It could be a summer internship that will be intense over the summer, 2 months, or it could be an extended internship throughout the year. But basically, that's what we are thinking at this moment.
Yeah, thanks, Amparo. I think so Talib is also coming in. I'll just say sort of on the content side, there's quite a great degree of flexibility. I try to kind of break it down a little bit in questions and challenges and different mini projects that one could be working on for that with that collaboration in mind. But it's also not just limited to this work with LLMs, which of course is exciting. But as Amparo was saying, we are not a huge team, and we have a lot of data production and a lot of very rich existing data that allows for collaboration and for value generation through collaboration.
Thanks, Philip. So there's another question. One is, are there any initial findings of the effectiveness of these AI applications that you can share? And as Talib has said, and also Philip, we are at the beginning of these applications. I know there have been some research about the use. Frauke here has been leading some studies on that. So, but on our specific work, we are just starting. So for the work that we have done, we don't have any findings yet, but we hope to be able to share this in 1 year or in the next months once we start working on this. There is one more question. Or Philip, please go ahead.
I'll just mention. I mean, I think it's really very very early, but we can probably quite soon we'll have a good sense with low resource languages like Bangla or Bengali, how accurate the transcript is, right? Because we will be able to compare a human-made transcript against how this pipeline performs. So these sort of little steps of results are going to be coming in over the next weeks and months. But until we have this sort of work stream 1, work stream 2, until we have the sort of like authoritative results there, it'll be a little bit longer.
Okay, there's one more question, and it says, could you say more about how you plan to evaluate the results of the AI processed open-ended questions? How do you balance the need to validate the output without resorting to a manual review of the open ends, which could kind of defeat the purpose of employing the AI tools?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, the evaluation probably it will involve at the beginning some manual coding, right, to compare, and then you can imagine. Now, the problem, of course, with the manual coding is that we know that also human coders are not perfect, but I think the principle really is this of having a benchmark for comparison, which in this case would be human coded responses, and then starting, then comparing the two against each other. You can use these as well to train these models, right, to get better at characterizing responses or ordering responses in the way that we think is correct, and then kind of doing some out of sample projections, right? I think that would be the principle. Now, for then scaling it up, you're absolutely right that this is not going to be feasible to do open-ended response coding by humans for large-scale surveys. Otherwise, we'd already be doing that. But you could imagine you have a small validation sample of human-coded open-ended responses in every large-scale survey operation that you run to assess the quality of the LLM. These are my thoughts on this.
Thanks, Philip. And I think the remaining questions are more on the administrative side.
I don't know if Talib wants to come in.
Yes, please, Talib.
Yeah. No, thanks. No, thanks so much, and thanks also on a lot on the questions. So I wanted to have just a few reflections on some of the earlier questions as well. First of all, kind of stepping back a little bit and about why we're doing this work with a specific focus on AI, and particularly because of our geographic focus being more broadly low and middle income countries, but particularly much of our work is heavily concentrated in Africa. These are the contexts that are quite underrepresented in terms of development and applications of AI-powered approaches to data processing and analysis. And yet we also know that these are also the contexts and operations that could probably disproportionately benefit from advancements in this area. So the effectiveness question that was asked, obviously we're very early on in this process, and I think a number of these ideas that we're discussing with you, I'm sure will evolve quite a bit after the initial set of pilots. But we're eager to exchange thoughts on this in terms of the direction of travel and in terms of the specific applications, use cases that we're sort of trying to develop using AI-based methods that we're also trying to validate. But the interest is really on the validation and assessment of effectiveness, particularly in these geographies, with the intent to promote them in large-scale operations that we'll continue supporting. So it's basically research with a very operational intent and operational mindset, and with the objective to initiate change, both change in mindset on the part of the National Statistical Office, but also change in the toolkit that that they rely on to implement surveys. So that's the overall goal, and obviously the knowing the effectiveness in these geographies is of intense interest for us, and will hopefully generate a slew of global public goods. So the question.
Can I jump in here? I have one
Yes.
question to this impact that you just mentioned. So what about cost? Will you have a good way to monitor costs and cost savings also as part of this pilot?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, it's an excellent comment, Frauke, but we're very much aligned also on the need to document both the costs as well as the cost savings that I think that can be brought upon by this, because that's oftentimes an afterthought. But I think in this particular case, we're trying to be cognizant about tracking this also from the get-go. So absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to chime in on a few other things. I think this question around collaboration, right? So, and sorry, I was Googling names. I was trying to place people because I don't really have a good background on several of you, but really nice to meet you all, and thank you also for your interest. So I think on the collaboration with the faculty and with the students. So from our side, obviously, Amparo mentioned that we have a number of products that we make available, right? So mostly in terms of data products, in terms of tools, but for us to sort of enter into this more of a collaborative relationship, right, with the faculty, with the students, we have to be thinking a little bit in terms of projects, in terms of a bit more of a programmatic approach that will fulfill the requirements on your side, and then would also justify sort of our in-moment investments from ours. So it's mostly thinking about projects that can be jointly conceptualized and implemented. So, and to the extent we can do this kind of synergistic collaboration, which can help students grow, fulfill their requirements, and hopefully for the faculty to be engaged, to get publishable outputs out of also this engagement, and for us to also benefit from it and fulfill specific requirements we have for the delivery of the work program. I think that would be the ideal case. So the ideal case for me to have a bit more of a programmatic approach, also with the involvement of the faculty that would see a reason, would draw. Hopefully, some parts of this presentation has drawn some interest in such a way that we can work on joint outputs. So, Philip mentioned this AI work program being one avenue for this, and we labeled it. We sort of chose this particular topic for discussion with the group because it is the topic that is more in its infancy. But obviously, there is a larger body of methodological survey research that our group is invested in, involved in, currently implementing, that is a bit more evolved as well. So if there are any faculty here, any survey professionals that are sort of interested in understanding the broader scope of what we do, to have that follow-up conversation, please also reach out to any one of us to also have that discussion.
Okay, the last one is any restrictions on eligible students, and that I guess it will be. So far, we don't think so, but that once an agreement or once the conversation starts, we will definitely reach out to the persons and we will check each case by case. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Amparo, just on this,
Yes.
no, very, very briefly. So many of you may have heard some changes in the way that the World Bank is going to be contracting, particularly short-term consultants. And this short-term consultants traditionally have also included, for instance, students that are on F1 visas, right? International students on F1 visas. Now, this regime will be changing. So contracting F1 students through short-term consultancy contracts will no longer be an option because they will expect the students to have a work authorization first, and then be registered for the World Bank as independent contractors. And oftentimes this is not necessarily an option for international students. So that contracting space will get complicated, but on the basis of, say, collaborative work that does not involve contracting, right? So say you can think about it as an unpaid internship, or you can think about it as a collaboration that helps the student, helps the faculty advance their work on the part of the university, and helps us advance our work on our side. Then those engagements will not be subject to these contractual engagements, so they can be a bit more flexible. So we're still working on the specifics of what that could look like after this calendar year for 2026. But for this calendar, at least for this calendar year, we have quite a bit of clarity on being able to move forward quite flexibly, right? To the extent that we have ideas that we can execute through this collaboration and be delivered this calendar year. But in general, even in 2027, this kind of more collaborative relationship that would be established between university and the World Bank, that will happen on a different footing. I don't think it can happen on the basis of individual contracts. I think it will need to be part of an agreement between the university and the World Bank. So the nature of the collaboration will change, but there will still be avenues for that.
Great. Sounds like a lot of conversations will happen in the future. And Amparo, if you can share our closing slides. I want to make sure everyone is aware of our next SODA Symposium on September 10th. Catherine Abraham, one of our faculty members and former commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, will talk together with the discussant Diadem Tüzemen from the Coleridge Initiative. They both will tackle the issue of modernizing economic statistics. And on-site in Maryland, March 25th and 27th, we will have an MPEC conference with a very interesting discussion on these kind of academic, private sector, public sector cross collaboration. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.